What was that?
I don't know, but it was huge.
I never thought I'd be telling you about something that the US Navy tried to erase from existence. But here we are. July 20th, 1965. Two experienced naval veterans descended into one of the most mysterious places on Earth and witnessed something so impossible that their official testimony was scrubbed from the records within hours. What they saw down there in the crushing darkness of the tongue of the ocean changed everything we thought we knew about what's lurking in our planet's deepest waters. The morning sun was blazing over the turquoise waters of the Bahamas as Marvin McCamus squeezed his weathered frame through the narrow titanium hatch of the DSV Alvin. At 52 years old, McCamus had spent more time underwater than most men spend on dry land. 20 years in the US Navy, 8 different submarines, countless descents into places where human beings were never meant to go. He was a marine electrician turned deep-sea pioneer, one of the founding members of the prestigious Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. This wasn't some weekend warrior looking for thrills. This was a man who understood pressure, darkness, and the unforgiving nature of the abyss. His co-pilot, Bill Rainey, was cut from the same cloth. Decorated veteran, expert navigator, the kind of guy they called when something absolutely had to go right. Together, they were about to pilot humanity's most advanced deep-sea submersible into a place that had never been explored by human eyes. The Alvin itself was a marvel of 1960s engineering. 7 meters of titanium and steel, designed to withstand pressures that would crush a man's body in milliseconds. Mechanical arms capable of precision work in total darkness. A single viewport offering a window into an alien world that existed right here on our own planet. The tongue of the ocean. Even the name sends chills down your spine when you understand what it really is. Picture this. You're swimming in the shallow, crystal-clear waters of the Bahamas, maybe 30 feet deep, coral reefs all around you, tropical fish everywhere. Then suddenly, the ocean floor just vanishes, drops away into a black void that plunges straight down for over 6,000 feet. It's like swimming to the edge of the world and looking straight into hell. That's where McCamus and Rainey were headed. Their mission was routine, or at least as routine as diving to crushing depths in experimental equipment could be. They were supposed to survey an underwater naval listening post, check some cables, take measurements. Standard military stuff. Nobody expected them to encounter something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The descent began at exactly 0800 hours. At first, the water around the Alvin was that incredible Caribbean blue, so clear you could see for hundreds of feet in every direction. Schools of yellowtail snapper parted like liquid silver as the submersible sank deeper. But as they passed the 200-foot mark, something changed. The blue began to fade to gray, then to a murky green, and finally to an absolute, impenetrable black that seemed to swallow their lights. Inside the cramped sphere, you could hear everything. The hum of life support systems, the steady ping of sonar, McCamus and Rainey's breathing echoing off the titanium walls. At 3,000 feet, the pressure outside was already enough to crush a car. At 4,000 feet, they were in a world where no sunlight had ever penetrated, and still they kept descending. Visual on the bottom, McCamus reported into his headset as the Alvin's powerful halogen lights finally illuminated the seafloor. What they saw was a landscape that looked like another planet. Grey silt stretched out in all directions, broken by strange rock formations and the occasional deep-sea creature that looked more alien than anything Hollywood could dream up. They began their slow drift along the edge of a massive underwater cliff, following a communications cable that snaked across the abyssal plain like a lifeline connecting civilization to this forgotten world. But that's when McCamus saw something at the very edge of their lights that made him kill the thrusters and press his face against the tiny viewport. At first, it was just movement. In a place where nothing should move except their own submersible, Something was definitely moving out there in the darkness. Something big. "You seeing this?" McCamus whispered to Rainey, his voice tight with concentration. Rainey leaned over, both men now staring out into the black water beyond their lights. Whatever it was moved with purpose, with intelligence. It wasn't drifting with the current like dead matter. It wasn't the random motion of a deep-sea creature following instinct. This thing was aware. McCamus adjusted the lights, angling them toward the movement, and what came into focus next changed both men forever. The shape that emerged from the darkness had a thick, powerful body, maybe 20 feet long, built like nothing either veteran had ever seen. But it was the neck that made their blood run cold. Impossibly long, stretching out from the body like a serpent, ending in a small head with two distinct, intelligent eyes that were looking directly at them. "Jesus Christ," Rainey breathed, his professional composure cracking for the first time in his career. The creature wasn't just looking at them. It was studying them. Those eyes, clearly adapted for the crushing darkness of the deep ocean, held an intelligence that neither man was prepared to encounter 5,000 feet beneath the surface. The thing propelled itself through the water with 4 powerful flippers, 2 at the front, 2 at the back, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for something so massive. McCamus grabbed for the camera controls, his hands shaking despite decades of underwater experience. The Alvin's camera system was designed for photographing the ocean floor and distant objects, with a fixed focal point that couldn't capture anything closer than 15 feet. But this creature, this living impossibility, was right there, maybe 10 feet away, staring at them through the viewport. "Get us closer," Rainey urged, but even as McCamus tried to maneuver the submersible into camera range, the creature seemed to understand what they were attempting. It moved with them, staying just out of focus, just beyond the reach of their equipment. It was as if the thing knew exactly what they were trying to do, and was deliberately avoiding being photographed. For several minutes that felt like hours, the three of them floated there in the abyssal darkness. 2 human beings in their titanium cocoon, and something that should have been extinct for 65 million years. The creature's neck rotated with serpentine flexibility, keeping those intelligent eyes locked on the submersible. McCamus could see every detail, the way its flippers moved through the water with perfect efficiency, the prehistoric elegance of its movements, the undeniable intelligence behind those ancient eyes. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature gave them one last, long look and angled its body upward. With a powerful thrust of its flippers, it disappeared into the black water above them, leaving McCamus and Rainey alone with the crushing silence of the deep. Both men sat in stunned silence for several minutes, trying to process what they had just witnessed. McCamus was the first to speak, his voice shaky but determined. "We need to document this. Every detail." He reached for the Alvin's wet log, the official permanent record of every dive. With meticulous precision, he recorded everything: the depth, the exact time, the GPS coordinates, and a detailed description of what could only be described as a living plesiosaur. "This is going to change everything," Rainey said, watching McCamus write. "Discovery of the century. Proof that these things survived the extinction." McCamus nodded, sealing the log entry with his signature and the official timestamp. For them, it was a historic moment, the kind of discovery that would rewrite textbooks and make headlines around the world. They had documented proof that somewhere in the deepest parts of our oceans, creatures from the age of dinosaurs were still alive. But when McCamus returned to review the log just days later, the page was gone. Not torn out roughly, but carefully removed with surgical precision. The entry that should have changed marine biology forever had been deliberately erased by someone with the authority to do so. When McCamus approached his superiors about the missing documentation, he was met with cold stares and terse warnings about the sensitive nature of deep-sea military operations. The message was clear. What happened in the tongue of the ocean was to remain classified, buried in bureaucratic silence. Someone, somewhere in the chain of command, had decided that the world was not ready to know what was lurking in the deepest parts of our planet. But you can't erase a man's memories. Years later, when author Charles Berlitz was researching his book, Without a Trace, McCamus finally had the chance to tell his story. Berlitz showed him a scientific illustration of a plesiosaur, and without hesitation, McCamus confirmed it. That's exactly what both of us saw that day, 5,000 feet beneath the surface. McCamus maintained his story until his death in 2004. Rainey, who passed away in 1985, never wavered from his account either. Two decorated veterans, with nothing to gain and everything to lose, stuck to their impossible story for the rest of their lives. Carl Schucker, a respected cryptozoologist, would later state that given McCamus's credentials and reputation, it was one of the most compelling reports of an unknown marine creature ever documented. What makes this encounter even more chilling is what we've learned about the tongue of the ocean since 1965. This underwater trench isn't just deep, it's a perfect preservation chamber. The water temperature down there hovers just above freezing. The pressure creates an environment where organic matter can be preserved for millions of years. If any prehistoric marine life was going to survive the mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs, this would be exactly the kind of place where it could happen. Think about it. We've explored less than 5% of our planet's oceans. The deep-sea trenches like the tongue of the ocean remain as mysterious and unexplored as the surface of Mars. We're constantly discovering new species of deep-sea creatures, some of which look so prehistoric that they seem like they swam straight out of the Mesozoic era. Giant tube worms, bioluminescent jellies, creatures with no eyes that have adapted to eternal darkness. If the ocean can hide species like that, what else is down there? The military's reaction to McCamus and Rainey's encounter tells us something important. This wasn't dismissed as the hallucination of two men suffering from nitrogen narcosis. This wasn't filed away as a curiosity. Someone in authority took it seriously enough to actively suppress the evidence. That kind of official response only happens when something significant has been discovered, something that certain people don't want the public to know about. But here's what really keeps me awake at night thinking about this story. McCamus and Rainey weren't the only ones to see something impossible in those waters. The Bahamas, particularly around the tongue of the ocean, has a long history of unexplained marine encounters. Local fishermen have stories going back generations about creatures they glimpsed in the deep water, things that didn't match any known species. Military personnel stationed at nearby bases have reported similar sightings, though most keep quiet about them. And it's not just the Bahamas. Deep-sea exploration teams around the world have documented encounters with unidentified marine life that challenges everything we think we know about what survived the great extinctions. The difference is, most of these reports disappear into classified files or are dismissed by the scientific establishment as misidentifications. If you've ever experienced something unexplainable, drop "witnessed" in the comments. Because McCamus and Rainey's story reminds us that our planet still holds secrets, even in 2024. The deep ocean remains the final frontier, a place where creatures from another age might still be thriving in the crushing darkness, waiting for the next brave explorer to glimpse them through a tiny titanium window. The DSV Alvin, by the way, is still in service today. It's been upgraded and modernized countless times, but it's the same submersible that carried McCamus and Rainey into the abyss that day in 1965. The same vessel that later explored the Titanic wreckage and discovered hydrothermal vents. It's seen more of our planet's hidden places than any other human-made object. And somewhere in its logs, in the records that survived the military censors, there might be other encounters that would change everything we think we know about what's really living in the deepest parts of our world. The next time you're swimming in the ocean, even in shallow water, remember McCamus and Rainey. Remember that beneath your feet, the seafloor drops away into trenches so deep and dark that they might as well be on an alien planet. And in those trenches, in places where the pressure would crush your body instantly and the darkness is absolute, there might be eyes watching. Ancient eyes, intelligent eyes, eyes that have been watching from the depths for millions of years, waiting for the next human brave enough or foolish enough to descend into their domain. What McCamus and Rainey saw in the tongue of the ocean wasn't supposed to exist. But it did. And if it existed then, it might still exist now, gliding through the eternal darkness of the deep ocean trenches, a living reminder that our planet's greatest mysteries aren't in space. They're right here, in the crushing depths of our own world's forgotten places.